our viewers from Kenya and around the globe, many thanks for joining us. I am Faith Kaulu, coming to you live from Nairobi, Kenya, and this is The Press, a show where we get to take an exclusive and universal look at substantial issues affecting the public in matters politics, health, sports, arts and culture. But first of all, let us have a look at major stories making headlines across the world. More than 100 people in Aleppo, Syria have been left injured and hospitalized after a toxic gas attack hit. It is reported that terrorist groups shelled residential areas in Aleppo with explosive projectiles containing toxic gases that led to civilians choking. The Syrian State News Agency has now confirmed that 94 civilians, including dozens of children, suffered from asphyxiation following the attack. Moving on, the United Nations is now warning of an impending food crisis set to hit the Central African Republic if nothing is done to resolve the humanitarian crisis in the country. Data from the UN Humanitarian Agency reveals that 63% of the population, a total of 2.9 million people, requires aid and protection. The growing unrest and violence in the country has forced many to flee their homes and abandon their fields, spiraling the food insecurity witnessed in the country. Elsewhere, the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, a Saudi Arabian journalist, has continued to elicit different responses as his death still remains unsolved. Relying majorly on circumstantial evidence and expert conclusion, the Central Intelligence Agency now believes that Mr. Mohammed bin Salman, the Saudi Crown Prince, ordered for Mr. Khashoggi's assassination. However, the US President, Mr. Donald Trump, has openly declared his support for Saudi Arabia in the wake of the slaying of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, despite accusations from Turkey's foreign minister for turning a blind eye on this case. As we delve in today's discussion, remember you can talk to us on our social media handles, that is at Kaulu Faith, both on Facebook and on Twitter. And today, right here at The Press, we're going to have a look at Jamal Khashoggi's murder. Now, let me break it down to you in case you still don't get it. Jamal Ahmad Khashoggi was a Saudi Arabian journalist residing in the United States, and he was assassinated in the Saudi Arabian consulate in Istanbul, Turkey. Now, his case still remains unsolved as the blame game continues, but this is a very important topic for us to have right in our country as we continue to witness journalists being threatened and unlawfully jailed. Now, this brings in the question, is the media free from political influence and interference? Remember, you can talk to me via social media handles, that is at Kaulu Faith, both on Facebook and on Twitter. And right about now, heading on Facebook, at Cynthia Okoth says, today's topic is very sensitive and affects our nation directly. Sophia Wanuna's incident at JKIA still lingers on my mind. Our correspondent Kelvin Kimaili has been on the ground trying to understand the politics behind media. Let's have a look at what he gathered.
Former President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi has been admitted to Nairobi Hospital.
Data published by press freedom organizations indicate that the threats faced by journalists worldwide are on the increase. The universal safety of journalists covering sensitive stories and unearthing them to the public is increasingly threatened. The Constitution of Kenya recognizes media freedom and the legal environment for media to operate in as anchored in the Constitution of Kenya and Articles 34 and 35. On the other hand, this guaranteed freedom and independence is barely achieved as cases of journalists harassed in their line of duty have raised a lot of concerns among students pursuing communication, with a few ready to change the script and ensure that freedom is finally served to all journalists.
I don't think there's media freedom in Kenya because most media houses in Kenya are owned by politicians, and this is very hard in terms of to get the true and unbiased content from our news or from our media stations. And the other, for example, we actually saw a media house is being shut down because of the same, meaning that there's just no media freedom. You can't say something against the government or against someone else. And the other incident is about Sophia Wanuna, how she was mishandled while covering the Miguna scandal. As for me, what I can ensure to keep media freedom for myself is just to be relentless, just like Sophia Wanuna. I mean, it didn't stop her. She just continued doing whatever she was doing, even despite being mishandled. And the other thing is just consistency and making sure to support other journalists. When a journalist is victimized because of doing something that is right, just support him or her, and that is how we're going to ensure that there's media freedom in Kenya.
Even though journalists are being threatened or anything to do with threats from the government or an influencer from the country, I believe they should stand with the truth, because that goes back down to the common mwananchi. You have to give the common mwananchi a true story without being biased. And for me, I'll stand with the truth, and the truth it is.
Over the years, stories of journalists arrested, harassed, jailed or even murdered unlawfully have left many scared and trading on safer grounds. Early this year, the Interior Cabinet Secretary Mr. Fred Matiang'i ordered for the closure of 3 television stations, KTN, NTV and Citizen Television, leaving viewers at home to stare at black screens as the controversial mock swearing in of the opposition leader Raila Amolo Odinga was ongoing. This act marked dark days for Kenyans, and as many will have it, Kenya joined the League of Nations with obscure reputations for the lack of media freedom. Journalists from different media stations expressed shocking ordeals at the hands of policemen.
What we only saw is police officers taking the stairs, coming, and one thing they did is, the first thing they did to me is they pushed me.
I was filming while walking away, and this cop came and started attacking me. And I think he went a bit too far, literally, because he chased me like 30 meters from where we were. We had already left that place, but he kept on charging at me. He tripped me. I fell on my elbows, and then he kicked my camera, and then he started kicking me on the ground.
The possibility of either strengthening the existing press ombudsman or the establishing of a truly independent media tribunal has merited consideration and began public debate. However, in either case, independence must be safeguarded by ensuring that there is no direct regulation by the state or the commercial media. Over the years, reporting in politically conflict areas has left journalists trading in a fine line between safety and media freedom. Kelvin Kimaili for The Press.
That was Politicized Freedom, a feature compiled by our correspondent. Now Kevin Kimaili joins us live from the ground. If you can clearly hear me, Kevin, just let us know what is the probability of having a free and independent media?
Well, Faith, I can get you clearly, and the probability of Kenya having a free and independent media is not something that is far from realization, because we have already enshrined this in our constitution, and we promise that journalists need the freedom and they have the right to broadcast, and Kenyans have the right to gather information, and all this can be achieved if we just implement what has been written.
All right, and maybe one more thing, what is the common and outstanding reaction from the people?
Well, for most media literate people, it's an issue of concern, because yes, we say we have the freedom and the rights for the media and people to acquire information, but in reality sometimes we see government interference and other sources interfering with media, such as advertisers and also media owners. So we feel that there is need, and the probability of people thinking that this needs to be improved on is becoming higher and higher with each passing day, because so many Kenyans are educated and they need information that is not diluted by so many other things.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for such an enlightening information.
Right, thank you, Faith. Back to you in studio.
Now remember, you can continue talking to us via social media handles. That is at Kaulu Faith, both on Facebook and on Twitter. And if I may just sample a few of your comments as they continue to stream in on Twitter, I can see at Pamela1044 saying, justice should be served. I dream of a media that is very independent and free, a media that will not bow to political influence. At Jalafe, he states, seeing journalists express the harassment they went through in the hands of the same government that is supposed to protect them is so heartbreaking. A new dawn is coming. Now here at The Press, we don't just end it there. We take an in-depth look and analysis at matters, as well as bringing different voices of reasoning to the table to help us comprehend things better. So today on board we have Mr. Joseph Njane, a news anchor and reporter at Royal Media's Radio Citizen. Secondly, we have Ms. Winnie Maganga, a journalist and correspondent at Citizen TV. And last but not least, we have Mr. Sami Baraza, a former MC aspirant as well as the youth governor in Bungoma County. Thank you so much for being here. Now, if we may start with you, Mr. Joseph Njane, what is your take on media freedom?
Currently, and especially from our country, let's come home. I think that there's still political interference, because you find that most of the media houses, yes, they are there, they claim to be independent, but there is still political interference from the owners, especially those who own the media houses. Most of them are political leaders. So even the stories they are doing, you'll find that most of them are biased, no independence. Yeah.
So why do you think this is the case, especially in a country where the rights and freedom of journalists and media in general is well stipulated in its constitution?
I think it's because of lack of political support from our leaders, from institutions like security, because yes, it's there in our constitution. We have even such institutions like Media Council of Kenya who are supposed to make sure that security or safety of journalists have been enhanced or has been enhanced. But you will find that they don't get support from police, they don't get support from the government, like police, like the ministry, like ICT ministry, or even interior security ministry or interior ministry. So I think we still need more support from such institutions, from government, from other stakeholders like civil societies, media council, as well as journalist association, because we have several journalist association like political journalist association, we have parliamentary journalist association, as well as Kenya Correspondent Association. Yeah.
And just to finalize on this with you, Mr. Joseph, is there hope for media that is free from political influence and manipulation?
In our country, Kenya, I think it will take us some decades before we achieve that. Yeah, because if we don't have that support, if our media houses are still being owned by politicians, yeah, because these politicians have a say, yeah. So if you do a certain story, or if you do a story that maybe in one way you'll have to brush off, I don't think that it will take us few years or few months to achieve this, yeah. It will take us another century to achieve that, yeah.
Well, right about now, we move to you, Ms. Winnie Maganga. Earlier on, we had Mr. Joseph Njane, who shared with us his sentiments on media freedom. What is your take on this?
We can't say we have a lot of freedom, because by the end of the day, our very own Stephen Leto was arrested at the GKIA the other day when Miguna landed in the country. So I can't say, yes, there is freedom, but at the same time, it depends. It depends with the influence the politicians tend to have on media. Yes.
Now, let us take the case of Jamal Khashoggi and bring it right here in our country. Do you think journalists in Kenya are safe when it comes to covering and unearthing sensitive pieces to the public?
Such cases have not yet happened, and it's not something that we wish for, or it's something that we tend to wait for it to happen, you see. So for Jamal Khashoggi case, I think the government the government for Turkey and also for the Saudi Arabian as well. So I will really urge the government to fight for the rights of Kenyan journalists. Jamal Khashoggi is not the only, just that it's the latest, you see, because in Somalia, I remember, I think 6 months ago, journalists were killed as well, in Istanbul as well, in Pakistan. I don't know, but I wouldn't want such cases to happen in Kenya. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Now moving on to you, Mr. Sami Baraza. From previous conversations on media freedom, it is quite clear that political manipulation is very evident. Why is this the case?
Because most media industries are owned by politicians, and so they have influence on the media side.
If I am getting you very clearly, Mr. Baraza, you are putting it out there that if media outlets were not owned by politicians, then they would have been free from any political influence.
Yeah, this because politicians are the ones who are meant even the same constitution, and are the ones who legislate on the same constitution. So if they're the one who owns most of the media industry, they're very adamant to even changing the same constitution to appeal to the people in the media industry. And for them to have a business in the same industry, which means they have much influence on it.
And maybe just to break it down for our viewers, how is political influence in the media affecting us as a nation?
Depending on the level of influence, I see that even the journalists and people in the industry fear so much. They fear politicians, and whatever the politicians say, the media industry follows. So if only the government can put measures to guard the interest of the media, then yeah, they'll be free.
Now, thank you all for your insight and great input on today's discussion. Remember, on board today we had Mr. Sami Baraza, the current youth governor in Bungoma County, Miss Winnie Maganga, a journalist and correspondent at Citizen TV, and Mr. Joseph Njane, our reporter and news anchor at Radio Citizen. Now, heading back on our social media pages just to have a look on your comments as they continue to stream in. On Facebook, at Abdiaziz Hashim says, such an informative interview today. Totally loved the talk on media. All we need in our country is a media that is free from any political influence. Media freedom is a talk that has been there since time immemorial. Now the question is, what actions are we willing to take that will lead us into achieving our desired goal? Because the more we continue to talk without taking any actions, the more we continue to lose even further. John Kitui, Dennis Otieno, William Munuhe, and the recent case of Joseph Masha, just to mention a few great journalists in our country who were allegedly killed in their line of duty. Now may the great ideas they had of unearthing stories to the public without fear of political influence incarnate in 1,000 more lives. Let us all arise and stand against this dissolute act, and may our voices break the chains that are withholding us from freedom. And in Mahatma Gandhi's words, be the change you want to see in the world. Well, that's all we had for you on this episode. Remember to join us next time for more informative discussion. My name is Faith Kaulu. Goodbye.